Hi, my name is Zara Al-Ghazali. I'm going to be presenting primary congenital hypothyroidism. It's the disorder that I chose at the beginning of the class at Doane University for the online genetics class with Dr. Karen Stencil. Just a little brief overview or the description of the genetic disorder. Primary congenital hypothyroidism is when there is a deficiency discovered within the thyroid hormone at birth compared to myxedema, which is usually described as an underactive thyroid gland in adults. Infants undergo a screening test to check the thyroid functions after birth. They're immediately known if they have an underactive or an absent thyroid gland, which then would categorize them under having an endocrine disorder called the primary congenital hypothyroidism. So a couple of major characteristics, primary congenital hypothyroidism or CH causes impairments on neurological functions, physical deformities, and growth, and is primarily due to the lack of iodine in the body of the mother during pregnancy. There are many signs and symptoms of this disorder and a few physical effects because it is mainly in infants. It targets infants and then you take medication and then they grow to be okay, hopefully. A physical effect of this disorder is appearance of a missing a very small thyroid gland. The thyroid gland lays right here in the front of your throat. Another is the thickening facial features, excessive sleeping, constipation, yellowing of the skin, and the whites of your eyes also turn yellow, and a larger tongue. And there's also more signs for that too, and symptoms. Signs of CH are abnormal bone growth. They don't really eat a lot, so poor feeding, fatigue, again, like excessive sleeping, lack of weight gain because they're not eating, swelling near the navel, a little crying, they don't make much noise, and mental retardation. So the prevalence like how many people does it affect? This disorder affects one infant in 2 to 4,000 newborns. Within those newborns, it affects more than twice as many females than it does with males, and the reasons for this is still unknown to science. So I went ahead and did my own little research for my own knowledge as how long a child should be taking medication if they were to if they were cleared of congenital hypothyroidism, and the results were a little surprising to me because only because I assumed that the child will take medication for a year and they'd be okay. But the current guidelines suggest using medication up until the age of 3, and sometimes they also suggest early discontinuation. So the molecular cause of the disorder, uh, its official name of the protein responsible for the disorder is called thyroid stimulating hormone receptor with a subunit beta, or they'll call it TSHR and then subunit beta. The gene PAX8 is responsible for certain mutations of CH. When the disorder comes from a mutated gene in each copy of the parent cells, TSHR or DuoX2 is the responsible gene. As far as the genotype, it is located on 14q31.1, and the phenome mapping key number is 3. That's on the chromosome. In other cases where there is no history of the disorder in families at all, like no carriers, no nothing, the disorder is mutated in the gene that occurs during the formation of the eggs and or the sperm. The gene results in a PAX8 gene or the TSHR or the DuoX2. So a normal function and the impact mutations of the protein is going to be talked about a little bit here. Um, The protein for this disorder is called many names. It goes by thyrotropin receptor, like I mentioned before, the TSHR protein, and also the G protein. The function of the normal protein is combined with a thyroid stimulating hormone to initiate a change in cell activity. So that's the normal function. And then the impact part of it, Approximately one-third of patients with central hypothyroidism demonstrate an isolated TSH deficiency as a result of mutations in the genes encoding the TRH receptor or the beta subunit of the TSH, which I mentioned before also. So I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but this is the underneath the microscope picture, the C105VFS114X uh, is the mutation, which is on the actual amino acid. And just to discuss a little bit more about that, it's called cytosine 105, which is characterized by a T deletion in codon 105. So cytosine 105 is the deletion of 105. It lacked 5 amino acids in the C terminal length, which is comparing it to um, the wild type and the premature stop codon at a position of 114. Therefore, the TSH mutation causes many mutations, including amino acid deviations, shortening in length, and modifications in the disulfide bridge pattern. So mode of inheritance, according to, and I did link the references in the end. So according to the U.S. National Library of Medicine, most cases of this endocrine disorder occurs in people with no history of the disorder in the family lineage. Like I mentioned before, where you can have no one in the family, or when it is inherited, it usually means that both copies of the gene in each cell have mutations. So from the mom and the dad. This is a process of genetic variation within the parent genes. So they're both carriers, and then they give it to their child. Another name for the copy of the gene mutation is autosomal recessive inheritance pattern, because uh, even though the parents don't might not have the disorder themselves, they do carry it. So the gene is recessive. It's not dominant in the parent because when they grow up they don't have it. So when the recessive gene from here and the recessive gene come from here and they go into the child becomes dominant into having CH. What this also means is that both parents were carriers of the mutated gene and pass it down to the offspring, which I just demonstrated. In other cases where there is no history of the disorder in families at all, the disorder is mutated in the genes that occur in the egg and the sperm. So here is a illustration that I made within the class assignments, and as far as the pedigree inheritance pattern, like I showed up top, the parents over here, Fauzia and Khalid, they're both big P and little p, which means they're carriers and they're not dominant. So would they have a 1/4 chance of passing it to their offspring. And in this case, Halim is dominant to primary congenital hypothyroidism, which means they did detect this at birth, and he will have to take medication to solve the disorder up until. And then from there on, him and his wife also have a chance of giving it to their child because he is recessive and she has just a carrier, um, which they have a half chance rather than 1/4 chance with compared to Halim's parents. And they did pass it off to one of their child, and both their other children are carriers. And then you could also see that Sukaina Abdullah have a 1/4 chance as well, and then Salim and Noor also have a 1/4 chance, and they did pass it on to their offsprings. So, like I explained, in most cases, the parent has recovered from the disorder and become carriers. If both parents are carriers, they have a 1/4 chance of afflicting a child with a disorder, which I explained just now. So options for genetic testing. There is option for this, and it is mandatory in test is mandatory in all 50 states. So the genetic testing is called Analyte. It's an immunoassay biochemical genetic panel, which is done by taking a sample of the patient's blood from the heel of their foot, and they put it on a piece of paper which becomes dry, and they send it off to the lab, and then the lab detects if the patient has a deficiency in the thyroid hormone or not. So how is a genetic test done? Which I explained just now. So the test is first done by obtaining a blood sample from the heel of the patient, and it's tested for the hormones T4 and the TSH. And then the test results must be confirmed by obtaining another blood sample, but it's taken from the vein. So one is from the heel and one is from the vein. If both tests confirm a low count of T4 but an elevated TSH, then the diagnosis of congenital hypothyroidism is confirmed. Um, on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint, babies undergo the screening test because the thyroid hormone plays a vital role in the growth of their bodies and the cognitive development. So the brain, which all starts from here. The hormone is it starts from the brain. So early detection and treatment would commonly result in better outcomes. As mentioned, the thyroid hormone is essential for growth, but it is also for maintaining energy and warmth, which is metabolism for the child. Are there any controversies as far as this genetic test go? And no, there is not. So testing of the thyroid function is now widely advocated for before pregnancy and early in pregnancy, especially where fertility is impaired, where assisted reproduction is used, so IVF. Another reason where it is widely advocated for is when the pregnancy has complications or there is complications that have occurred for, let's say, high risk pregnancies or a breech. So that's definitely like a history of breech. So if they do have that, they would probably do it more often. So therefore, there is no controversy associated with this genetic test, and I advocate for it after doing this research project within the weeks of the genetic class. Lastly, are my references that I used throughout my project. They are all listed here, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed and learned something.